Darrell Bevell. The Lions made a switch at head coach and GM over the Thanksgiving weekend, parting ways with Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn, and now Darrell Bevell is taking over as interim head coach. This will be his first game, so let's welcome in my co-host, Anthony Bellino, down at the Henry Ford Health System Update Desk. Anthony, welcome in to the show. Definitely a lot to talk about, considering lots has changed since the last time you and I met on this pregame show.
Yeah, a lot has changed. And I think that for Lions fans and for the team, I think you're going to see a lot of excitement. I think that the team's going to have a new kind of look to them this coming week. And I think that this happens across the NFL. You can look to what happened in Houston when they removed Bill O'Brien as their head coach and de facto GM, when Atlanta made their change at GM and head coach as well. There's always something, doesn't matter how many years you go back, something about the NFL when there is a change near the top. Teams seem to play with a little bit, I would say, invigorated, if you will. And I think that Darrell Bevell's comments leading up to this week, talking about let the guys go out there and play with their hair on fire, have a good time, enjoy the game. Some of those encouraging words, maybe he'll take the top off this offense, and we'll see what this vehicle can do, and if how this offense is going to move maybe a little bit differently than we've seen now that he is the interim head coach, and see if Matthew Stafford's just out here kind of flinging it around a little bit. And for an interim head coach to really come in and say, hey, we have 5 weeks left, everybody's got something to prove. It's a showcase for everybody, and I think that that's very important. It's also important to remember that at 4-7, with the extra playoff spot available, it ain't over till it's over, Tori. We're not out of the woods yet. You know what I'm saying? So it's possible. It might not be probable. You're going to need a little bit of help along the way, but you do own some tiebreakers here. So with 5 games remaining, there's a lot to play for this team, and there's a lot to play for the coaching staff, and then for all the players individually. It's very important that they take these 5 weeks and try to maximize everything that they can, and so that they have that film going forward, whether it's to stay here in Detroit or whether it's for another opportunity in the league. Every single game, every single opportunity is a chance for these guys to showcase what they can do, and that goes for every position, from guys down on the field to guys in the coach's box as well.
Well, this is a chance for Darrell Bevell to showcase what he can do. This is his first opportunity to be a head coach in this league. Guys get into the coaching profession because they want to do it at the highest level, and Darrell Bevell is having a chance to do that. He knows this is his audition. There are many teams that are going to watch what happens here in these last 5 games. This is a career opportunity for him, and he made it clear this week that although you never want to be in the situation where you have to take over under the circumstances that he did, he is very excited that the Lions chose him to have this opportunity, and he's amped up. It was exciting listening to him this week because you could just tell how happy he is to have this chance, and you got to be happy for a guy like Darrell Bevell. Truly a good man, so I'm excited to see what he does out there on the field this week. You mentioned it, that phrase, hair on fire. I loved that about how he talked about what he wanted his team to be like this week. He wanted them to bring energy. Of course, when a team makes a coaching change, it's because things weren't going the way that they needed to go. So, you got to switch some things up. Darrell Bevell's bringing his own flavor into this role, and I am looking forward to seeing what that looks like on the field today in Chicago. Let's take it to the player departures as they headed off from Detroit Metro Airport and headed off to Chicago to take on the Bears. They faced the Bears in week 1. They'll be taking them on once again this week. There you see QB1 heading on the plane. Anthony, what are your thoughts on what we should expect in Chicago from a very different Lions team than a week ago?
Well, a very different Lions team and a very different Bears team from the team that we saw earlier this season as well. Now, the Bears look like they're going to go with Mitchell Trubisky today. When we look at the success that Mitchell has had against the Detroit Lions, it makes you scratch your head a little bit. 6 career appearances against the Lions. Trubisky's passed for over 1,600 yards, 14 touchdowns against just 4 picks with a 106 quarterback rating, including 4 consecutive games with at least 3 touchdown passes and a passer rating of over 100. So today is going to be the Lions defense against Mitchell Trubisky and a Bears team that, even though they were 5-1 at one point, they have kind of since basically fallen off of a cliff. I mean, they've lost 5 in a row, and Matt Nagy, he's not somebody who is unfamiliar to this. He was actually on a Chiefs staff that lost 5 straight to open up the 2015 season before they got on a roll and ended up winning 10 of their final regular season games consecutively. So this is a big challenge here for both of these teams with a lot riding on the line. The Bears 5-6 right now. They're in their worst stretch since they dropped 5 in a row back in 2017 when John Fox was in his final season as the head coach for the Bears. So a much different Bears team that has had their defense really carry them over the course of this season. When the defense has started to sputter out, the offense just hasn't been able to produce. So a big test today here for the Lions defensively to try to be able to shut down Mitch Trubisky.
Absolutely, Anthony. I hear you. And you know what? As you're talking, I'm also watching these guys head on the plane for this game in Chicago. There's Everson Griffin there hopping on the plane, talking a little bit. I love the energy that guy brings. Of course, he's familiar with playing around this division. And I got to say, Anthony, you know, we talk about these guys heading out every single week when they'd have a road game. And Marvin Jones just brings it every single week. And we showed him a little bit earlier. He was wearing that red suit, really nice white bag. He's my best dressed this week.
You know, can we have a best dressed award? I feel like we should nominate Marvin Jones. I
feel like he's won it like maybe at least like 80% of the weeks.
That's what I'm saying. We should have like a Lions Awards night, and then we could just give like a virtual trophy. Tori's take, who is the best dressed of the team in 2020? Marvin Jones. I wondered, is this something that maybe his wife puts together for him? Does he have a stylist? Is he picking it out himself? I got a lot of questions for Mr. Jones.
Marv's got a lot of style. I think he's picking it out himself. Let's take you guys to our inactives presented by Henry Ford Health System. Here's a look at the Bears inactives. Not too many notable names there as far as the Bears go, but let's take a look at the Lions inactives. A lot of names on that list that are pretty big contributors, Anthony. Obviously, wide receiver Kenny Golladay, definitely disappointing that he's not able to be in the lineup this week. DeAndre Swift was downgraded to doubtful on Saturday after coming down with an illness after he cleared concussion protocol last week. Came down with an illness, was sent home. They said it was non-COVID related, but he was not able to go today either. Deshaun Hand, Austin Bryant on the defensive line, and finally, Jeff Okudah will not make it into the lineup again this week. Anthony, that's a long list.
Yeah, for his I guess inconspicuous, I would say the Bears inactives list is the Lions is the complete polar opposite. Not having Kenny Golladay, not having DeAndre Swift in the lineup. You're asking a lot from everybody else now to pick up the slack, and then Deshaun Hand and Jeff Okudah on the defensive side of the football, two names that'll really stick out to you as well. So as I was wondering how you're going to describe the Bears inactive list, because it was like, oh, okay, not a whole lot of big names. All right, I can agree with that. And then you look at the Lions, and it's like, oh boy, here we go again. So, to get these guys healthy at some point throughout the next, 4 weeks following this game is going to be crucial. It's going to be a big game for Kerryon Johnson and Adrian Peterson. How does Darrell Bevell want to use those two running backs, knowing that DeAndre Swift is not in the lineup today?
Yeah, and you look at that cornerback position as well, a position that the Lions has struggled with injuries with all season long. Desmond Trufant's been in and out. Jeff Okudah's been in and out. Even Justin Coleman spent some time on IR. But here is one note with Okudah out. Cornerback Darryl Roberts was able to come off of IR this week. So that is another player that they get back at that cornerback position. All right, we've got plenty of time still to talk about the Lions. But before we get to all that, let's take a look around the league with our BetMGM out of town preview. No Thursday night game this week because things were just a little bit crazy last week. We weren't sure if that Baltimore-Pittsburgh game was ever going to happen. It finally did on a Wednesday afternoon, maybe the most bizarre timing of an NFL game ever. But Anthony, what are you taking a look at this week?
Oh my goodness, I love these matchups. Okay, so let's go across the board. Let's go Indy and in Houston. This is a huge game for Houston, a very big game for Indianapolis and the Colts. Will Tua Tagovailoa, will he start against the Cincinnati Bengals? A very winnable game there for Miami, who's in the playoff hunt on the AFC side of things. The Jacksonville Jaguars traveling to Minnesota. Can Jacksonville do us a favor and get a win against the Vikings? We'll be looking out for that one. Then you have Baltimore in Dallas on the random Tuesday night game because of the schedule, which you mentioned. I love Wednesday afternoon football, though. The Baltimore Steelers game, that was fantastic. Very much looking forward to San Francisco and the Buffalo Bills. How will the Bills travel? Remember that game is actually being played in Arizona because of the rules surrounding Santa Clara County, where San Francisco plays their home game. So that's actually a home game for San Francisco, but played at the Cardinal Stadium. The Cardinals have a big one the day before against the LA Rams. And then how about the Patriots having to go East Coast to West Coast against Justin Herbert in the LA Chargers? Cam Newton and company, they're making a push as well there in the AFC East. So a lot of exciting games this week and a lot of fun matchups, I think, as well.
I feel like we might touch on that Chargers-Patriots game a little bit later when we get to our fantasy picks. But before we get to our fantasy picks for this week, let's take a look back at last week's picks. We talked about Tori's Best Dressed Award. Now we're going to talk about who gets that Jess Trophy, named for our wonderful producer, Jess, in our fantasy picks segment of the show. Looking back at last week, Anthony, I got to say, it was me once again. What is that, 5 weeks in a row now? I'm losing track at this point, honestly, but I can't take too much pride in this week because I really didn't have a strong week outside of Nick Chubb.
You know, you sound just like the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, they get a win against the Ravens on Wednesday. What's head coach Mike Tomlin say? They're playing junior varsity football. You win for the 5th consecutive week. I finally get an edge at quarterback. Josh Allen, 150 yards and a couple scores.
Nice one.
Yeah, that's fine. What about Travis Kelce? You know, 82 yards and 8 catches. That's a realistic football box score number for a tight end. But no touchdowns there. I take Dalvin Cook this week. What's he do? He said, "Oh, you're not. I'm not on Tori's team. I'm not going to do a whole lot." That's what happens. I take Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb disappears, and it's all about Kareem Hunt. You take Nick Chubb, the guy goes crazy. Yeah. So I got to tip my cap. I'm coming back strong with the picks this week. Tori, I'm not letting you win again this week. I'm pulling out the big guns.
All right, Anthony. I'm looking forward to seeing who you select this week. I do love our fantasy picks segment. Now, we only started awarding the Jess Trophy maybe 5 weeks ago. I will admit that you probably would have won it several times before then.
Look at this. Now you feel bad for me.
Since we started giving the award, it's been mine every single week. So bring it this week, Anthony.
I'm glad it's just a clip art trophy and not actual hardware that we could take home, because it would be stuck up there in the 3rd floor with you, and I would get nothing down here on the desk. So
I'm not sorry.
No, I don't blame you. Hey, we'd also like to take this time to thank our presenting partner of today's pregame show, Priority Health, and big thanks to them for being the presenting partner of the Detroit Lions pregame show today. Fans, a reminder to make sure you tune into Fox 2 each Sunday at 10 a.m. for Lions Game Day Live, and turn on Fox 2 tonight at 11 to watch Sportsworks and Lions Game Night for a complete recap and interviews from today's game. And if you're watching from the Detroit Lions broadcast region, make sure you tune into your local Fox station to catch today's game, which will be kicking off at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And with the holiday season now underway, the Lions and Pepsi have something very special for you, the fans. Just grab your phone and open the Detroit Lions mobile app and check out our new virtual holiday filters brought to you by our friends over at Pepsi. Now, you can even try on the Kenny Galladay custom holiday sweater. Be sure to share these photos with your friends and your family as well. And at each home game this season, we're recognizing select teachers as our champion of the game, fueled by Campbell's Chunky. We're counting on fans to nominate high school teachers who make a significant impact in their communities. Just visit DetroitLions.com/champion to nominate a deserving high school teacher today. This season, there's even more ways to get into the game thanks to Lions Bingo, presented by BetMGM. Fans can play along for free all season long for the chance to win great prizes, including the grand prize each week, which is a weekend stay at an MGM Resorts location. Just download the Lions mobile app and register to play Lions Bingo each and every week. Play along during the game, and once you hit the bingo, you score courtesy of our friends over at BetMGM. Learn more and lock in your Lions Bingo board before kickoff today by visiting the Detroit Lions mobile app now. And we want to see your game face. You have the chance to be featured on today's show by posting using the hashtag DTEGameface and showing us your game day energy. Don't miss out on your opportunity to be a part of the Lions game day. So post now using the hashtag DTEGameface.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Priority Health. I'm Tori Petry. I've got my Priority Health green on today, apparently. We're excited to be chatting Chicago versus Detroit today with you guys in Week 13. Lots has changed since our last pregame show. The Lions now have Darrell Bevell at the helm of this football team. So let's bring in Tim Twentyman down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk to discuss a little bit more of this change. Tim, what do you feel like Darrell Bevell brings to this team this week?
Well, first off, I didn't get the green memo. Was I supposed to wear green today?
Well, now we're Christmas colors, so I
we
think
are.
that's still appropriate,
we're
right?
Festive, right? I like it. It's obviously a change in personalities, I think, is the biggest thing. Bevell's really well liked by his players, right? He's a little bit more laid back. The players talked about, some of the subtle changes, him playing music all the way through practice, right? I think it's a little less serious, and strict and stringent under Bevell. And so I think those are probably the biggest differences, and we'll see how that translates onto the field today in Chicago.
Absolutely. That was one thing that Darrell Bevell talked about this week, was that he feels like there isn't two separate ways to just have fun or work hard, that you can do both things at the same time. And that was what he wanted to bring to the team this week as he kind of added his own flavor to this team. Obviously, we're going to start with the offense today as we discuss what will happen in Chicago. This offense has struggled at different times this season. Obviously, it was Darrell Bevell's offense, but how much do you think that could change now that he is in sole control of it?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. Bevell said this week that, Matt Patricia gave him, a lot of control on offense. And so I wouldn't expect to see a bunch of changes, but I think one thing that Darrell said this week is that he wants the big plays back in this offense. Yeah. And you've seen that a little bit with some of the trick plays that they've done, some of the, tossbacks to Matthew, and they had, one in Thanksgiving. And they've sprinkled them in throughout the year. But I think maybe the biggest difference is trying to hit a few more home runs. Not so much playing to how the defense is playing you. They've seen a lot of cover 2, a lot of cover 3, right? Keep everything in front of you. Well, I think maybe you try to dictate, your style to the defense a little bit more instead of being a little bit more conservative. I think maybe we'll see a couple more shots.
Okay.
No, it's harder without Galladay, obviously, and Marvin Hall was a guy that they used down the field, and he was released on Saturday. So we'll kind of see what that looks like and who it looks like. Maybe T.J. Hawkinson down the seam, they mix some deep shots to him, and obviously Marv can still make plays down the field. But that's the biggest thing, I think, Tori, might be I think we see a few more shots down the field today.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing exactly what that looks like. Definitely will be interesting to watch, and we will be getting a few clips from warm-ups in Chicago here in just a few minutes as the players begin to take the field. You're looking at a live look there into Chicago. Mohamed Sanu will be at the wide receiver position today for the Lions. An interesting change over the weekend, Tim, as the Lions parted ways with Marvin Hall. Definitely puts a different perspective there at that wide receiver spot today. What do you think we should expect to see from them?
Well, I think right there, and you mentioned it, you see Sanu running out on the field, and you get Danny Amendola back, right? He's missed the last 2 games, and I think that's key as well. And, I think just how Mohamed Sanu has progressed, and we saw it last week with the touchdown and the 2-point conversion. I just think they like his style. I think he brings more to the table than maybe Marvin Hall did. Marvin Hall was your deep guy, right? And they utilized that. But short routes, intermediate routes, that really wasn't where Marvin Hall succeeded. And so I think Sanu brings a bigger overall package. And so I think we'll see some of that. And then you want to get the young guy involved as well. What do you have in Quintez Cephas, right? This gives him more of an opportunity to play the last 5 games as well. So I think it's just a combination of wanting to get some young guys involved and then seeing what you have in a veteran in Sanu and how he maybe fits into the future as well. And so I think that's part of the reason why there was that shuffle up at wide receiver.
All right, well, let's talk about the guy who is going to be throwing the ball to those wide receivers, Matthew Stafford. We've always got to touch on him when we talk about this offense. You're looking at his stats so far this season, 18 touchdowns to 8 interceptions, a 92.7 passer rating. How does this change affect Matthew Stafford, who has been through many head coaching changes over the course of his career?
Well, I don't think it's going to change much for Matthew because obviously he's got a close relationship with Bevell. They work really close week in and week out, and I don't think that changes. I think maybe Bevell's you got to sit in on some special teams meetings and got to sit on some defense stuff and have an overall gauge of the team. And so, maybe he was pressed a little thin in terms of the amount of time that he got to spend on offense. But I don't really think much changes for Matthew. He's comfortable in this offense. Bevel's still going to be calling the plays, and so that's going to be normal for him as well. And I think just the biggest thing for me is finding the explosive plays that we talked about and then limiting the turnovers, right? We saw it on Thanksgiving, right? The pick six. That was his third of the year, and those are just killer plays, right? And we talked about it, I think, ahead of Thanksgiving too, is some of the interceptions that he's had in deep in his own territory and in opponent territory in the end zone with opportunities to score. And so I think that's the biggest thing today is that you just got to limit the turnovers, right? Play within yourself. This is a good Bears defense. Everybody knows that. And don't make the mistakes. Don't make it easier for them, right? This is a Bears offense that really struggles, and they've struggled all year. And so don't give that defense an opportunity to score free points, right? Don't give that defense an opportunity to flip a short field for Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah.
Make them earn everything. And I think that's the biggest thing for Matthew Stafford today is just play within yourself and don't make the big mistake.
All right, well, we've got to talk about his run game as well because, unfortunately, DeAndre Swift will not be able to go again this week. He cleared concussion protocol middle of the week this week, but then came down with an illness. They said it was not COVID-related, so they sent him home out of caution. He was downgraded to doubtful over the weekend, and he was inactive this morning. So this is who you're looking at for the running backs for the Lions today. Tim, what should we expect at the running back spot?
Well, first, it's unfortunate for DeAndre, right? I mean, missing these games. The last time we saw him was Washington, right? He got an opportunity to start, 149 scrimmage yards, a touchdown. Looked everything of what, fans, coaches, players, teammates expected of him when the Lions took him in the second round. So you feel sorry for that young man, but hopefully he's back soon. And I think what you're going to see is what you saw with the Lions on Thanksgiving, right? You're going to see a pretty consistent mix of Kerryon Johnson, Adrian Peterson. Those two guys combined for 101 rushing yards on Thanksgiving, and I thought Kerryon was pretty good, catching 4 passes for 52 yards too, right? Providing some of that stuff that Swift does in the passing game. So I would expect pretty much more of the same that we saw on Thanksgiving. You're going to see Adrian Peterson on early downs. He had 2 1-yard touchdown runs, so he's your goal line guy. And then Kerryon's going to mix in on the 3-down back situations, the passing downs, and kind of try to fill in as best he can for DeAndre Swift.
All right, we were talking a little bit before today in our show today about the running back position and how that pertains to fantasy for the Lions this week. You said you feel like Kerryon Johnson could get a fair share of touches this week.
Kerryon's not a bad option. I think if you look at just how they used him without DeAndre Swift on Thanksgiving, right? He caught 4 balls. I think they threw it to him 5-6 times. Caught 4 for 52, right? And he rushed 11 times for 46. So, that's a good mix. And when you're talking about fantasy, I always have a soft spot for running backs, right? Because of the touches like you talked about. And when you're a running back and a quarterback hands it off to you, boom, that's your show, right? As a receiver, you're reliant on not only getting open, but a quarterback spotting it, throwing a good pass to you, everything else. And so I always like running backs in fantasy. And if you got some injuries, you're dealing with something, you need a late start, I don't think Kerryon Johnson's a bad option. Obviously not ideal against Chicago. That's a good defense. But just the way they're going to use him and the number of touches he's probably going to get today, not a bad option if you're looking for one.
I will say Tim Twentyman is quite often the highest scorer in our office fantasy league, except for the week that he played me, and then I happened to get it.
The one week that you scored the highest total, right?
Literally the one week.
Who were you playing against?
It was you.
It was me, right? It just goes to show.
You've gotten it plenty of other weeks,
I know.
Nothing to complain about there. Well, we got to talk about the guys who are going to be blocking up front for that run game and protecting Matthew Stafford in the passing game against a very good Bears defense. Who will be important along the Lions' offensive line today, Tim?
Well, I think you got to start with the 2 edge guys, right? Taylor Decker and Tyrell Crosby. Especially when you're talking about a guy like Mack. 6.5 sacks leads them. Just such a talent, and one of those few guys along with like a J.J. Watt and an Aaron Donald who can wreck a game, right? Who can change it in one play, right? Sack, strip, fumble, recover, touchdown, wreck a game, right? Who can change it in one play, right? Sack, strip, fumble, recover, touchdown, boom, now you're in a hole. And so I think these 2 guys right there are going to be really key. Taylor Decker's having one of his best seasons. He's only allowed a sack in 1 game this year. And so he's been really, really good. He anchors that unit on the left side. And look, Tyrell Crosby stepped in, I thought, played pretty well all year, pretty consistent on the right side. And so for me in this one, I think it really starts with those two guys outside because Akeem Hicks, their talented defensive tackle, is going to play. And so there's not going to be that room to step up if you're Matthew Stafford, right? You've got to keep those guys clear of Matthew and not allow him to run into Akeem Hicks in the middle. And that's why the Bears are so good. When you can combine outside pressure with inside pressure, it's just so hard for a quarterback. But you can double team, a guy like Akeem Hicks with your center and guard easier than you can the tackle. So those guys out wide have to be good in their one-on-one matchups. And against Khalil Mack today, that's going to be a key for the Lions.
Okay, we can't move on from talking about this offense without giving you an opportunity to talk about TJ Hawkinson, as we do each week. So, Tim, what role will TJ Hawkinson play today?
Yeah, he's going to play a big one, as we've seen. With no Kenny especially. And you just look at the numbers, right? These are top 3 really among tight ends in the league. 530 yards. I love the average, and the touchdowns is up there. And look, I think the biggest thing with TJ is how he's developed is a security blanket for Matthew Stafford. And they're mixing him in trick plays like we saw on Thanksgiving. Tight end screens has become part of this offense now because of his ability. And we see him there. He's just athletic, right? He's big, athletic, he's strong, he can block, he can play in line. You can stand him up and play the slot. And so I didn't think that coach right there had much of a chance, but he's shown that when the Lions took him number 8 overall, this is why, right? We're seeing it now. He's become one of the better young tight ends in the league, and he's a big part of this offense, especially when they don't have Kenny Galladay. I think he's become one of those guys that Matthew Stafford really looks to, and we've seen that in the numbers, and I think that's going to continue, especially the more games Kenny Galladay misses.
All right, good stuff, Tim, on the offense, but we still got to talk defense, and we will do that right after this quick break, so don't go away.
Priorities shift from rush hours to slow breakfasts, from busy schedules to scheduled downtime. And as life happens, shifts and surprises are sure to follow. At Priority Health, we'll always be ready to shift with you, from complicated policies to ones written by humans, from a plan for 1 to a plan for 3. Because your priorities have shifted, maybe it's time your health insurance did too.
Show off your Lions pride with the official Detroit Lions debit card offered only by UMCU. Choose how you will represent your team with 3 signature Lions designs. UMCU enhances your banking experience with access to a convenient mobile app, nationwide network of ATMs, and 24/7 online banking. Plus, cardholders get special member-only offers from the Lions. Join UMCU to get your exclusive Detroit Lions debit card today. Visit umcu.org. Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Priority Health. I'm Tori Petry. We are discussing the Lions matchup against the Chicago Bears on the road this week. Obviously, it will be the first game under interim head coach Darrell Bevell. We've talked about what he will do for this offense as he takes over. But let's bring in Tim Twentyman down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk to talk about what he could do for this defense. Obviously, we know this defense has struggled so far this season, Tim. So how could it change this week with new leadership?
Well, I think this is where we'll see the biggest difference. It's hard to change a scheme completely in 3 days, right? And Unlin said as much. I think he was being a little bit coy about that too, because when we talked to Romeo Quara later in the week, he said, yeah, there's definitely some changes. And I think for me, the biggest thing is this Lions defense since the beginning of 2018, right? Bottom 3 in blitz percentage, bottom 3 in time for opposing quarterbacks to throw, and bottom 3 in pressure rate. And so I think that's the biggest thing here is when you look at that, if you're Corey Unlin, you've got to say, hey, I've got to do something to create pressure, right? Whether that's more blitz packages, some different personnel groupings. But I think the biggest difference today is we're going to see them dial up the pressure maybe a little bit more than we have. This is also a Lions team since the beginning of 2018 that leads the league in the percentage of rushes with only 3 guys. And so I think you're going to see, them try to generate pressure a little bit more under Corey Unlin, try to be a little bit more aggressive. At least that's the approach I would take. And I think Corey's going to look at some of those numbers too and say, hey, we've got to find a way to pressure quarterbacks more than we have. And the best way to do that is middle of the season, you're not changing personnel, right? Your roster is what your roster is.
Right.
But you can dial up some pressure, right? And that, I think, is the biggest change that we might see these last 5 games, is them try to attempt to generate pressure their own kind of way.
Yeah, I don't want to skim over those stats that you just gave us, Tim, because I think they are very interesting as far as how often the Lions blitzed up to this point and how often they rushed 3 men. You said that they were near the top of the league in terms of how often they were only rushing 3 guys. Run us through those one more time.
Over 20% of the time, just rushing 3 guys. And so what it is, right, is it's you rush up, right, keep a quarterback in the pocket, and then you play coverage behind it. Well, the problem is the way this league has transitioned is you've put this defense with big linebackers, right? Big physical linebackers, guys that you wanted to hold up in the run. Matt Patricia talked about guys that could get off blocks and be strong there. But when you're only rushing 3, now you're giving a quarterback an opportunity to, find tight ends, running backs, skill position guys. And this is a linebacker group that doesn't have a ton of speed. And so we saw it last week with Duke Johnson, right? Being able to just outrun Jamie Collins to the end zone and have a touchdown. And we've seen that often, this year. And so, I think you've got to dictate, how you want to play defense to the offense, to the opponent, right? I just don't think rushing with 3 guys, letting a quarterback sit there and go through his progressions and reads, and then that sets up the mismatches that you have on defense just because of the system players that you wanted to have here. And so I think you've got to be aggressive. You've got to take those big physical linebackers that can rush the quarterback because they've got some versatility and some size. I think you play to their strengths, right? What are their strengths? Big, physical, right? Can rush the passer. I don't think it's your strength to have those guys sitting back in coverage, and trying to play in space against speedier guys. And so if it's me, I think those are some of the things that we can immediately see different on defense is trying to affect the quarterback. And like I said, bottom 3 in pressure rate, bottom 3 in time for a quarterback to throw. Those are numbers that need to change. I think that's the biggest way that you improve on defense, and the quickest way that you can improve with the personnel that you have is that you change it up a little bit and you be reactive instead, or be proactive instead of reactive, right? You be aggressive, go get them, right? Now, you're going to put your secondary in some situations where it's one-on-one, but obviously what they've been doing hasn't been working, right? And I think we can all agree to that. And so the quickest way to change that up for me is to be way more aggressive and really try to blitz and attack Mitchell Trubisky in the Bears offense today.
Really good insight, Tim. I love all of that and all of those statistics. We'll see what ends up happening if the Lions are more aggressive today. But if they are, which players are you looking for to stand out?
Well, Romeo Quara, I think, is one, still that's been really, really good all year. He's a guy that's been the most consistent pass rusher. And so it starts with him on the edge, right? He's been really, really good in one-on-one matchups. And, the other thing about blitzing too, Tori, is when you blitz, you've got to pick that up, right? And so everybody's got one-on-one matchups.
Yeah.
They can't chip, right? You can't double team. And so, a guy like Romeo, he could have even more success. And you look at the 6 sacks, the forced fumble, the fumble recovery, right? Impact plays. And he's been their most consistent guy doing it. And I think they're going to need him to continue to do that down the stretch if they're going to kind of change this thing around on defense.
All right, how about on the interior of that defensive line? Obviously, missing a few guys there with Danny Shelton heading to IR. Deshaun Hand is not able to go this week. Neither is Austin Bryant. Who steps up on the interior?
Well, I think the name you look at first is Nick Williams, the veteran guy playing his old team, right? A guy that he's going back to Chicago for the first time. I think he's going to be a little bit pumped up. He obviously broke onto the scene last year with the Chicago Bears. And he's going to have, the 1 sack we saw was Thanksgiving. I believe it was Thanksgiving. He was at or Carolina. So, he's been productive, as of late. I think going back and watching, some of the film of previous games, I think he's playing a lot better now. I think he was maybe dealing with some injury stuff earlier in the year. He looks healthier to me right now, and he's being disruptive. And so, he's the guy that's going to have to be. And then, John Pinacini and some of those young guys are going to have to get into the mix in the interior as well. But Nick Williams, to me, has to be an impact guy. He's got to be a guy along the interior that can, win some one-on-one matchups and can be disruptive and put some pressure on the quarterback. We've seen that recently, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, we're talking defense, but you guys are getting to look at a couple of the offensive players warming up. I just wanted to point out that was Quintez Cephas getting a little chirpy with the camera there. I like the energy. I like the energy there in Chicago.
Hey, real quick, we just saw Jamal Agnew going down and catching.
Yeah.
Without Marvin Jones, Tori, what do you think might be? You think Jamal Agnew will get an opportunity to maybe get some of those down the field?
You mean without Marvin Hall?
Or, excuse me, yeah, without Marvin Hall,
right.
We'll get some
That's
opportunities to go down the field. We see him in some of those reverse and some of those, running back rolls and short passes and screens. Without Marvin Hall, Jamal Agnew might be the fastest guy on the team. Now that Marvin Hall isn't here, I'm curious, and I know we're talking about defense, but I just saw the warm-up there. I'm curious if we'll see Jamal Agnew maybe get 1 or 2 shots down the field today. We'll see.
Absolutely. That would definitely be interesting today. You're seeing some of the DBs there as they huddle up on defense in Chicago. I do want to touch on that defensive back position, Tim, because the Lions have struggled with injuries there all season long. Desmond Trufant has been in and out. Justin Coleman spent some time on IR. Jeff Okudah has now missed some games. What's the situation at cornerback this week? What should we be expecting?
Well, that's going to be put on Amani Oruwariye. Obviously, he's their healthy guy, and he's really probably been their most consistent guy all year long. I thought he had a rough game against Houston, but Fuller's a good receiver, one of the fastest guys in the league, and so I think he'll bounce back. He's been really, really consistent all year long. So I think one game where you give up some shots, I'm going to let that pass with how good he's been in really a group that hasn't been consistent enough all year. And so the interesting one for me is Justin Coleman. At times when they've dealt with injuries, and obviously he's their starting nickel corner, but there have been times when he's bumped outside in injury situations.
Okay.
And so you got a guy like Darrell Robinson, Mike Ford. I know Mike plays on the outside, but if you're looking at maybe Darrell Roberts to be that third back, cornerback today, does Justin Coleman kick outside? You let Darrell Roberts play inside where he's more comfortable. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do. One thing to look at early on defense is Justin Coleman playing inside or is he playing outside? He's done both. And, I asked him that question this week, and he was like, I'm a football player. It doesn't matter to me. I'll play inside. I'll play outside. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he was signed here, and he most of the time he's on the inside, but he can step out and play out there. And so that'll be interesting to see what they do there. And they've got a tough task with Allen Robinson, Chicago's wide receiver. He was questionable. He is active today.
Right.
And I don't think he gets a lot of credit for how good he is. He is one of only 4 receivers, Tori, in the NFL right now with at least 70 catches, 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. The other guys on that list, Travis Kelce, Keenan Allen, and Devontae Adams. So he doesn't get a lot of credit for being one of those elite type guys, but he's a really, really, really good player, and the Lions are going to have their handful, so they got to figure out what they're going to do on the outside because Chicago does have some weapons at receiver.
Tim, thanks so much for weighing in on the defense. You're exactly right. Those defensive backs have a big task ahead of them. But one of them was actually involved in a pretty cool task during the week this week. Deron Harmon was part of a group that spoke to Detroit PAL students. Let's take a look at that video.
This week, the Detroit Lions teamed up with the Detroit Police Athletic League for an educational virtual chat with Lions players. Safety Deron Harmon and linebacker Anthony Pittman shared advice with Detroit PAL football players on how to perfect their craft on and off the field.
So I had to really stand out however I could, in order to be seen by these scouts, by these coaches, whatever. I always found little ways to separate myself.
For me in high school, I realized coaches wasn't coming to see me, so I had to find a way to go see them. So I signed up for a whole bunch of different camps. Try to just get my way into exposure camps, did good at one camp, then next thing I know, did better at another camp, then I got invited to a, top 100 showcase.
Just make sure you're ready for opportunities, man. If that's your goal, if that's what you really want in the world, man, go get it.
At the end of the day, if you truly just worried about yourself and pushing yourself to be the best that you can be, the sky's the limit.
For Detroit native Pittman, it was an especially unique experience because Detroit PAL was where he got his start playing football.
Yeah, so I played with the Westside Cubs back in 2008, and that really introduced me to football. It basically meant, giving back to the city. I've been in Detroit my whole life, played in Detroit, lived in Detroit, and I understand the Detroit work ethic, the blue-collar mentality. So, playing on those dirt fields with the Westside Cubs and playing, behind the city at Wayne State, it really means a lot to me. And I'm able to, be able to represent Detroit again, being a Lion. So it's the pride behind it. We talk about Lions pride all the time. I'm just very proud to be part of Detroit, and I was proud to be able to speak to Detroit kids and give back to them.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Priority Health. I'm Tori Petry. We are talking Week 13 football, where the Lions are about to take on the Chicago Bears on the road. And as we break down Chicago, let's turn to Mike O'Hara, who's down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk. Mike, welcome in to the pregame show. Excited to talk a little bit with you. How you doing on this Sunday morning?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Tori. Thanks for having me again. It's always great football Sunday.
I know. I always get to chat with Mike on Sunday mornings. I also get to chat with him on the One Pridecast presented by MGM Grand Detroit during the week. So I get plenty of doses of Mike O'Hara during our game weeks here. We got to talk about this Chicago Bears team, Mike. We were keeping an eye on the inactives list for the Bears to see how healthy they were going to be today, and it looks like they're pretty healthy.
Yeah, it certainly does, and I think one of the healthy additions they have is Akeem Hicks, the defensive tackle. I know we'll get to that further along in this segment, but he really adds an awful lot to a pretty good defense, and he makes it quite a bit better. In fact, I think our pal TJ Lang put something out on Twitter in midweek about Akeem Hicks being the key to that defense. And for a guy who played for the Packers as long as he did, then finished up with the Detroit Lions all in the same division, who better than TJ Lang to give us a hint and an insight on who really makes that defense go.
I like that little look we're getting into the field in Chicago. Interim head coach Darrell Bevell chatting with Chicago head coach Matt Nagy there ahead of this matchup. Two guys who will be very important to this game day today. Mike, you and I talked on the podcast this week about Matt Nagy and his comments after the Bears' last game. He was obviously very disappointed with how his team played last week. They have not won a game since week 6. What do you think Matt Nagy will be bringing to the table this week?
I mean, anything he can, really. I mean, he called out everybody, including himself. Yeah. The only people he exempted, I think, were the groundskeepers at Soldier Field, and they've gotten their share of heck over the years, too, for the condition of that field. But I think it's a desperation time for the Bears. When they were 5-1, a lot of people were saying, look, they're really not a 5-1 team. But they were. I mean, you heard what you get in the National Football League. Are they an 0-5 team? Well, not really, but they are, and that's their record. I mean, it sounds kind of ridiculous to put it that way, but as Bill Parcells, the great Giants head coach, Hall of Famer, used to say, you are what your record says you are, and that's exactly the case with the Bears, especially the way they got taken apart in their last game by the Green Bay Packers. That might have been, for them, the bottom of their season. At least they hope it is.
Yeah, they're definitely hoping to turn things around this week against a team that's playing their first game under an interim head coach. But the Lions are looking at the Bears and saying, hey, this is an opportunity for us as well. And one position that we have to talk about today is that quarterback position in Chicago. When the Lions played the Bears here at Ford Field, and we all remember how that one went in week 1, obviously, Mitchell Trubisky was the quarterback that go around. Mike, what are your thoughts on these two guys in Chicago?
Well, I'm not going to crumple this up and throw it away like I did last time, but there's a statistic that means absolutely nothing. Mitchell Trubisky for this season has 9 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. Hold on. That means absolutely nothing. After losing his 2 starts to the Lions as a rookie, drafted 2nd overall, by the way, he's now 4-0 against the Lions in his last 12 games against them. He has 12 touchdown passes and 1 interception. And that 4-0 record and that 12-1 ratio right there, that's the statistic that means something. For whatever reason, he's played his best ball. In that fourth quarter on opening day, when it's 23-6 going into the fourth quarter now, got to remember, in all fairness, the Bears had already started that possession, but he threw 3 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter. The Bears win 27-23. Now, I don't know if one play or one win or whatever can make an entire season, but that certainly seems, looking back, to have just been just the beginning of what eventually became the end for this season for the Detroit Lions, of just not being able to hold leads, getting teams going on runs, just like they did on Thanksgiving Day, with the Houston Texans. That just seemed to set the tone for the 2020 season for the Detroit Lions, and it was a bad tone to begin.
Well, you guys are going to look into the field there at Soldier Field in Chicago. That was Everson Griffin addressing the defense. He's a guy who's very familiar with this Chicago team, as he spent plenty of time with the Minnesota Vikings in the division. I know he's looking to get after that Chicago quarterback today. Mike, you shared some thoughts about what the Bears have done at quarterback so far this year. You shared that on the podcast this week. I really enjoyed what you had to say about Matt Nagy's decision at the quarterback spot. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't know if I can repeat it all word for word, but I just didn't understand it. Whatever you say about Mitchell Trubisky, look, he was 3-0 when they decided to go with Nick Foles, and to me, it seemed like it was preordained by Matt Nagy, the head coach, and whoever else in the front office, that they'd sign Nick Foles to create competition, and by gosh, they were going to find a way to create that competition by benching the quarterback when they're up. They've got a 3-0 record. I didn't understand it then, and I don't understand it now. And you look at well, these are stats, the real stats. Nick Foles has got 10 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, and he just has not been an effective player. He doesn't have the mobility that Trubisky has. Whatever you think about Mitchell Trubisky, he's a good, tough guy who has won games for that football team. It was just 2 years ago he was 11-5 as a starter for that team. I'm sorry, 11-4. They ended up 12-4. But he started 15 of those games, and last year they were 8-8, and he was a starting quarterback on that team. Whatever good has happened in the last 3 years for that franchise has been with Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback. And like I said, Tori, I just did not agree with it from the beginning. I'm not saying it proved that I was right, because who cares what I think, but I think it was the wrong move.
All right, well, let's talk about some of the other weapons that this team has on offense. Allen Robinson, Jimmy Graham, those are some guys that you really got to look out for, especially with this Lions defensive back group who, as Tim and I talked about, has been pretty beat up so far this season. You're taking a look at Allen Robinson's stats. 71 receptions for 829 yards. He's averaging over 11 yards a catch and 5 touchdowns so far this year. Mike, what's it going to take to stop this guy?
Well, you're going to have to cover. They've really had a problem. I'm sure Tim has talked about this, covering the crossing routes and stuff like that, and it's really burned them. Look what Will Fuller did, just a week ago. It looked like guys were wide open, from start to finish against Houston. And go back a week before that, a 20-0 loss to Carolina, to a team that had lost 5 straight games like the Bears have, with a quarterback, P.J. Walker, who'd never started a game in a National Football League. And they just took them apart. I mean, the Lions were a non-factor, starting right from Carolina's first possession. They went 95 yards for a touchdown. It was 7-0, and they were never headed after that. I mean, whatever they do, and we'll see. I think we'll see just some little signs of maybe a difference in philosophy, a difference in technique, a difference in a way of attacking issues with Corey Undlin on defense, just like we will with Darrell Bevell on offense now as the head coach. Maybe he has some ideas that he wanted to use that, in all due respect, maybe Matt Patricia didn't agree with, and we might see those. But I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, one way to disrupt the passing game is to get to the quarterback, and the Detroit Lions have not done a very good job of that this year. Maybe Corey has some thoughts about that, some plans, some strategies, and whatever he does in that regard, since the Lions haven't done much of it, it's something that the Chicago Bears probably have not seen an awful lot of on video this year from the Lions.
Well, the Lions have also struggled to stop the run as well on defense. What are they up against in David Montgomery?
Well, I think he's a good player, I really do, but I don't think he's a star player. He's got 575 yards rushing, but they've also used him more as a receiver of late. He's got 35 catches. Now he averaged a little less than 4 yards per carry, so I don't think you're going to see him. He's not going to break the long runs on you unless you have a complete defensive breakdown. But I think he's a good, tough, sturdy kid out of Iowa State who's got a good future in the National Football League. But certainly, I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's certainly going to just tear you apart, but he certainly can contribute to a good offensive plan.
Well, the Bears defense can certainly tear you apart if you let them. That is the strength of this Bears team, and they will have Akeem Hicks and Khalil Mack out there on the field today. How much of a threat is that duo on the Bears defensive line?
And I'm going to add a third one to that, too. Well, Khalil Mack, he's got, 6.5 sacks, and he's got 9 quarterback hits. And like I said before, what T.J. Lang said about Akeem Hicks, he thinks he's the key to that defense, and I'm not arguing with T.J. I'll let you do that when you do one of your wrap-up shows with him. But Akeem Hicks, think about this. He has 3.5 sacks. Doesn't sound so great, but he's got a team-high 14 quarterback hits, which means he's getting to the quarterback. And you can get that relentless pressure on a quarterback that you may not get him down, but you may force him to throw the ball before he wants to. You may force him to, pull it down and slide and try to find an opening and find a passing lane and all that. But all of that stuff, all the times you can make a quarterback move and do what he doesn't want to do, can be effective for a defense. Now, look, you want the sacks, don't get me wrong. But as long as you get him off his spot, like we always say about Tom Brady, make him get off his spot. I mean, lots of luck for the last 19 years on that. And I'm not putting Mitchell Trubisky in that category, but if you make a guy do what he doesn't want to do, then you've won that down, and you win the play, and you win enough of those, you can win games. But here's a third one. Roquan Smith, the inside linebacker, has 15 tackles for loss. So when you combine that with the hits from Akeem Hicks, and plus what Khalil Mack does coming screaming off the edge, you've got guys who can really affect the interior of the defense and do it also on the edge with Khalil Mack.
All right, we've broken down the Bears with Mike O'Hara. We've broken down the Lions with Tim Twentyman, but we've still got to get to Mike's keys to the game, and we will do that after this quick break, so don't go anywhere.
Priorities shift from rush hours to slow breakfasts. From busy schedules to scheduled downtime. And as life happens, shifts and surprises are sure to follow. At Priority Health, we'll always be ready to shift with you. From complicated policies to ones written by humans. From a plan for one to a plan for three. Because your priorities have shifted, maybe it's time your health insurance did too.
Love getting prices that are lower than low on food that's fresher than fresh? With the Kroger app, you can get personalized coupons on top of weekly sales and rewards like fuel points, all for prices that are lower than the everyday low. So go ahead, get lower than low. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Welcome back into the Detroit Lions pregame show presented by Priority Health. I'm Tori Petry. We are discussing the Lions Week 13 matchup with the Chicago Bears in Chicago. We've got Mike O'Hara down at the Henry Ford Health System update desk. We've discussed what to watch for on the Bears. Now, Mike, I want you to give us your keys for the Lions to take home the win today.
These are so important, Tori, that I wrote them down. Of course, I write everything down, so because I don't trust my memory. Now, as you know, this is stuff from me is very, very technical.
I know.
We'd
I know what
agree
to
with that.
expect from you.
So here we go. Number one, do this, okay? That's technical. Do what you did the first time you played the Bears to get a 23-6 lead. Threw the ball effectively, ran it effectively, good on special teams, and you really kept Chicago Bears off the board to the point, regardless of what I said in the first segment, I was thinking to myself, when are they going to get Nick Foles in the game? Well, we saw what happened after that. So do that. Do what you did to get a 23-6 lead. Very simple here. This is the opposite. Don't do what you did in the fourth quarter. Don't let Mitchell Trubisky stand back there, pat the ball, and throw 3 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter to give his team a 27-23 lead. Don't do this. Don't drive the length of the field and have your rookie running back drop the winning touchdown pass in the end zone. So there we have it in a nutshell. Do this, get a lead. Don't do this, don't give up the lead. Don't do this, catch the ball in the end zone. Very simple game plan. Darrell Bevell, it's up to you now.
Seems like a very wise game plan, Mike. Don't lose to the Chicago Bears like you did in Week 1 is essentially the key here today. What do you think? Did the Lions get revenge on that Week 1 game that they really felt like they should have had? Well,
I won't go through my chips and all that like we do on the podcast, but I like the Lions today. First of all,
okay.
I think it's just a team that's gotten some relief, and no disrespect to Patricia and Quinn, but you've got to change things up when you take over in mid-season or near the end of the season, because you got to give the players a sensation and a feeling that they're doing something different. I think Darrell Bevell's done that. He kept talking about energy, have fun, play like your hair is on fire. I think that's how I lost my hair, but do that.
You always play like your hair is on fire, Mike. Well, you're seeing that energy, and you're seeing Darrell Bevell there in Chicago. The Lions are heading back to the locker room. A few of them dancing around a little bit on the field. I like that energy that we are seeing from this team today in Chicago. We'll see if it translates to their play during this game. Mike, thank you so much for sharing your keys to the game with us.
Oh, okay, and thanks for having me.
All right, guys, we've still got to get to our fantasy picks today, so don't go anywhere. We will be right back.
To honor all the brave men and women stationed around the world who protect our freedom here at home, the Detroit Lions and Kroger invite you to submit nominations for your hometown heroes. Submit your nominations today at DetroitLions.com/hometown heroes for a chance to be honored this season.
We would like to take this time once again to thank our presenting partner of today's Detroit Lions pregame show, and that is Priority Health. Make sure you tune into the home of the Detroit Lions after the game on WJR AM 760, where you get all the latest info on the game, plus hear from interim head coach Darrell Bevell, and some of your favorite players as well. That's the Lions postgame show on WJR AM 760, the radio home of the Detroit Lions. And all morning, fans have been submitting photos showing their game day energy using the hashtag DTE GameFace, and you can see fans from all over are prepared. They're set and ready to go for today's game. Thanks to all of our fans who are part of today's DTE Game Face.
Anthony, it is now time for our fantasy picks in Week 13. I've won the Jess Trophy the last 5 weeks, but I want you to bring it today. Tell me who you're taking at quarterback.
You know you're in trouble when the other team's rooting for you. I'm going Patrick Mahomes. I need Patrick.
You're taking Mahomes?
Doing it for my homies, and I'm one of them. 30 touchdowns on the year. I'm going to need like 12 of them today, Pat. Come on, help a brother out.
All right, usually we try to pick players that are kind of in the same tier as each other, but you went Mahomes on me this week. I'm going Russell Wilson. So he's playing the New York Giants this week. He's had over 20 fantasy points in 9 of 11 games this year, so I think he's going to do it today against the New York Giants. How about that wide receiver spot? Who's it going to be?
Hey, by the way, did you know that Patrick Mahomes was a Tigers selection? Let's go to the wide receiver now. Let's take a look. I'm going to go Devontae Adams of the Green Bay Packers. He's going to have a big game today. Every time I choose him.
Page out of my book from last week.
Yep, if he helped you, the odds are he's not going to help me, but I'm praying for you, Devontae. Have a big game for me.
Okay, I'm going with somebody who had a really big week last week. 13 catches for 269 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I'm going Tyreek Hill. That's who I'm picking this week. Let's go to our running back spot, Anthony. Who is it?
King Derrick Henry. I've told you, I'm pulling out the big guns.
You've picked him several times this year.
Yeah.
So that's a good pick.
I need him. I need him today against Cleveland. Cleveland's run defense has been pretty suspect, and he's already got over 1,200 yards on the ground and 12 touchdowns. Big game for Derrick Henry.
All right, I'm going with Austin Eckler for the LA Chargers. We talked about it in our out-of-town preview. I'm taking him against the New England Patriots. He had 14 carries in his return to the field last week, but don't sleep on those 16 receptions either. Okay, we got to pick our Lion today. Anthony, who's yours?
You know what? I chose Matthew Stafford because he's going to have a monstrous game, new offense, and maybe not necessarily new offense, but maybe a little more flexibility with Darrell Bevell calling the plays and being the interim coach. So we're going to need a big game for him. But I should have went with Mohamed Sanu. I really want Mo Sanu to have a great game today.
I like that one. I like both ones. I'm actually going to go with Tim Twentyman's guy, TJ Hawkinson. I was telling him about it before the show. The Bears have allowed the third most fantasy points to tight ends this year. So that's why I am going TJ Hawkinson. Anthony, thank you so much for playing along. I like your picks this week. I'm feeling good for you.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad somebody feels good because I'm already questioning myself.
All right, we'll see how it goes when we have you back on the pregame show next week. Before we get to that, we got to get to our Ford starting lineups for today. Here's your projected starting lineup along the defensive line: Everson Griffin, Nick Williams, John Pennicini, and Romeo Okwara. Let's take a look at the linebackers, where we've got Christian Jones, Reggie Ragland, and finally Jamie Collins Sr. Let's go to the secondary now and look at who is the projected starters there in that banged-up secondary. Tracy Walker, Justin Coleman, Amani Oruwariye, and Duron Harmon. All right, guys, that does it for our pregame show presented by Priority Health. Don't forget to hang out with us on our postgame show after this game wraps up. It will be on Fox at 1 p.m., so make sure you tune in to your local listings, watch the game, and then come back here after it is over. We appreciate you guys joining us this morning. Enjoy the game.